Hello to all no-spin throwers around the world and the ones who perhaps want to start with that cool sport. I was asked to do a no-spin tutorial for beginners and advanced throwers, so I had no problem to begin with, but I had problems to stop, so it became quite big. Not much talking now, let's start. Knives are frozen. Before I start with the grip, I want to make something clear, because the word no spin is a little misleading. I know there are people that think you throw and the knife leaves the hand in that position and now flies also in that position till it hits the target, but that's not the case. Normally the hand or the knife leaves the hand at about a 90-degree angle. That depends on the technique you use, and the distance is often much bigger, sometimes also a little smaller. So I say about 90 degree. Now let's start with the grip. I only use one technique, that is the index finger on spine. That's your spin control. And you can get that so easy. Put the knife in the middle of your hand, close your fingers, then place the index finger tip only, not the whole index finger, on the spine, on the middle of the spine, and you have the thumb at the side. So the closed fingers you perhaps need later for a modification, also that you only use your index finger tip. And this is really very easy to get. Ready? Ready? No, not ready. That's why I like more symmetrical knives, because I have it always right in my hand and I can throw immediately. Okay, that's the grip. Index finger tip, closed fingers around the knife, thumb at the side. That's all. So you got the grip. Now I'll show you the easiest way how you reach this 90-degree angle you need for the release. It's a slide technique, means the index finger, while you move forward, slides along the knife. It wants to spin forward because of the throwing motion, and you work on that way in the opposite direction, so you give a backspin in the back of the knife. And now it leaves the hand, and this 90-degree angle begins to lean forward, and if everything is correct it should stick. So forward motion, slide, and that keeps this position. And I recommend practicing that first here in front of you. So the slide is like that now. You do motion very easy. And now you throw in your other hand, and the knife should not land like that, then you will overturn. When you slide, you reach that angle, and it should arrive about in the same angle in the other hand, like that. And now if I put my hand away, I have the stick. So easy arm motion, only straight in front of your body, and this slide. And now if you use another angle, normal angle, whatever that is, I use a lot of angles, something like that, then here's the slide now in that angle, but it's the same, no difference. And don't throw soft and don't throw hard, take medium energy, that's enough. And about the sticks, something like that you should always regard as a fail, because overturn throws you can forget. Overturn throws have the disadvantage they always are soft, because the energy disappears here in the air, and you're at the distance limit a little more, and it would have been anyway a real fail. So best is of course the parallel stick, But underturned sticks are also good because an underturned stick, zack, goes in the target. An overturned stick goes out of the target. And the underturned stick has the other advantage that you could have reached a bigger distance. So always check your sticks. As long as you can't have good angled sticks, you should not increase the distance. This mistake will become bigger and you will have much too much fails. That would be perfect. And now about the release. That's the hardest part in no-spin throwing, and the wrong release will be your main mistake for your overturn throws or any kind of fails, but mostly at the beginning overturn throws. And one of the things is the release point. If you throw a ball, you will release much later compared to a no-spin throw. If you throw the knife, then you have to release about here, little in front of you. If you are too far, the angle is too flat, you will not reach anymore the 90 degree you need, and you can't give power in the knife. So when you throw, the good point is here. Here you have the good angle and you can go hard in the knife. And for your first feel, if you try that, of course you want to try that. I showed that a lot of people over the years, and everybody could have a few tries his first no-spin sticks. Go to a small distance, take the grip, keep it quite loose, that the knife can move in the hand, but don't open your hand, always have the control with the closed fingers. That's for later, really good. And now the arm motion, that is not a good technique, but this is for your first feel, how's that, for the really beginner now. If you work without teacher, for these people of this video, who work alone in their backyard without teacher, so this is a very easy instruction now, and it should work. You lift your arm up, and now you pull it straight down, and let the knife move in the hand, and see what happens. Perhaps something like that. So that's for the first tries. What I recommend to do, a downward motion, because on that way most people understand the slide. If they throw forward, they always do something like that, they don't get the slide. But if I tell them pull down, then it works. And now, if you go a little on distance, then and you will do the same what you just did, then something like that will happen. What a mess. Knife overturned, that means you have to adjust the throw to the distance. And in the slide technique, you do it, you give a stronger backspin, so you have to go active in the back of the knife. You increase the release angle, you have more time till the tip is in front, you reach a bigger distance, very easy. No, not easy. Needs a lot of practice till you got a feel for the distances. So try the same. I still stay at this downward motion because it's easy for the beginning. Now we got it. Looks easy, but really takes time, a lot of time. And if you practicing means making one thing perfect with repetition. So now you work on the release, that's the one thing. And to make it perfect, you must have sticks, because if you only have fails, you can't analyze what motions or things you do have a positive or negative effect. So you must work with sticks. It's the best practice. And that you will reach if you stay at smaller distances at the beginning. And now how to throw. At the beginning you don't have to care too much about that part, because for a no spin throw you need special grip and a special release, but not a special arm mechanics. So I recommend keep it very simple, that you can concentrate on the release first. That's a real hard part at the beginning. So perhaps something like that. But you should also care about a few things. First, keep your throw clean. I recommend don't throw while walking and running at the beginning. Have a nice stance, left-handed like that. Then do straight motions, don't curve around. So have a clear line that will have positive effect on the flight path. By the way, a knife should only have one motion, no, two motions, the forward motion and that motion, but not something like that. I see often, or more often, at people at bigger distances, but there's a mistake. Then you have a wrong release. The flight path has to be straight, only the forward leaning. So do clean motions from a good stance, that's important. Then I recommend always using a drawback. I see people throw like that. It's up to you what you want to do, but if you have a technique without drawback, then you will have problems with power and distance. So use drawback. And if you come up with techniques like that, that is not a technique, that's a mistake. But I tried it at the beginning because I had no idea how to stop the rotation or to control the rotation. So it's logical that you come up with a technique like that, and sometimes I see people who do that. And in that case, the motion of the arm is wrong and the release. So this is a push, this is not a throw. A throw is something like that. This is a throw. But now you can do a throw, but do the release again wrong. And now you again push the knife. That's wrong. Later, and this has nothing to do with the Japanese shuriken style, because they also push, but it's a complete different technique. And I explain later in the video in index push that is also something different. This way of push you can forget. That's a technique you can't develop. So you have to learn that what I explained before, the release, where you really go fast in the knife and the knife begins to move, and till you got not that release, you're on the wrong way. It has to be like that. So it's also not possible to do the throw in slow motion, because you always have to work. If you throw something, then the arm becomes relaxed at the end. You use the momentum. Try, if you throw a ball or anything, you will do it that way. And you have to do that, and it's always fast. Even if you do a slow, quite slow throw, you see, the end is fast. You can't stop that. And you can't practice in slow motion. If you try something like that, you can skip that, because that is not the technique you will use later if you throw really. So you have to work with a minimum speed. And this is always quite fast, so a slow motion possibility is not there. Okay, so really think about that. The push motion is wrong, the arm motion is wrong, and also push release is wrong. And how said, it has nothing to do with the Japanese style, or that what I explain later. You have to work on the slide mechanic. When you can do that, no matter which distance, then you got it what you need for any distance. So really go fast in the knife and let it slide along the finger. Not push it, that's the wrong way. And if you work with the slide technique on adjustment, then I think I said that already, you will have a lot of overturn throws. That means you should learn to be able to do an underturn throw, that you feel the other side. So let's try it. Now this is our 350 here about. Let's do 3 underturn throws. So for the distance, I made the release angle too big. But it's important that you are able to do that, because perhaps for 5 meters that would be the correct release angle. Now of course I have to make it flatter, more flat, that I have a stick. But now I'm overturned, fail, so I need again more backspin, like that. And now if I increase the distance a little, I need a little more backspin. This is okay then. So, if you are able to do underturn throws, then you're on a very good way. Because at the beginning you will always have the overturn problem, because rotation control is not so easy. So try to do that you control the backspin. The thing, that's how the slide works. In this video I don't want to show you one special throwing technique or arm mechanic. I worked for about 2 years only on the Fedin technique, and for that I have tutorials, but I give you, or I try to give you, tips how you can develop your own style. So I talk about things I regard as important to do a good throw. What I don't like is throwing so first, this position does not exist for me. I don't start throws from that. Normally I start from the knife hanging down. And the other thing is, I don't do the work here in front of me, and I don't have static motions. I learned it all in the Fedin technique. First, I recommend working on this, let's call it snake arm motions, where you have your wrist loose, the wrist follows the motion by itself. And these techniques are not only Fedin, a lot of people do that. And I think they have a lot of great advantages. It feels very good, it looks cool, it's absolute natural. And it has the effect like a whip. You multiply the energy you put in with a chain reaction of motions. So on that way, if you learn that, you can really do on a quite effortless, very powerful throws. And another difference is when I throw like that. This is a back, forward, stop and go motion. And on that way, if you work like that, then you have a permanent motion. Behind you have the turning point, So the knife is always in a pulling position. You pull it back and now you don't stop that. You turn around and pull it in the target. At the end I always use a push with the wrist or index finger, hard to say, but I always accelerate after the pulling motion with a pushing motion. But you should regard as a mistake an arm pushing motion, that this is wrong. Technique like that you can forget. Never push with the arm, you have to throw. A throw is something like that. This is a throw, and some people, I did it also at the very beginning, try to push. But that is nothing than cheating, you can't develop a technique like that. So, what I learned in the Fedin technique was this flexible stuff, that the wrist follows the motion. And if you do it here, turning point, you can change the angle, there's no difference. Now I pull up, turning point, and again the same. The next thing is using the room behind you to get the momentum. That was my big mistake at the beginning, that I always stopped here and then pushed the knife. But you have to go behind you, and now you pull the knife. It's very different. And even if I do small motions, at this moment where I'm behind my center, I begin to pull. And this is a good technique, pulling. So always have a drawback behind you and then pull. Important. And another thing is, if you throw and it leads to something like that. I mean not the fail, I mean the forward leaning. There's also a problem which you should regard as a mistake, because it's always better that you stay, as I say, center balanced. Everything which is something like that, there's something wrong. And the wrong thing is the too late release. So you have to bring the release closer to you so that you can stay center balanced. You see, here I stay. And of course you can do things like transfer your weight from the back foot to the front foot, so that gives more power, of course, and that is okay, because you have a good stance here, you have a good stance here. The bad thing is this awkward forward leaning. Also, if you do a step, it's great because you transfer your whole weight on another point where you again have a good stance. So that's also okay. And in my opinion, a technique should be good for any distance. So if you increase the distance, you don't change your arm technique. You do it only more intense, but not really different. I think that's very important to get a clean technique. And of course on bigger distances you can add a step or so. That does not mean that the arm mechanic changes. Okay, and now I was asked to put in the tutorial also a part where I talk about how to throw with power. I've seen the first time in my life somebody throw a knife when I was a little child in Western movies. So I always regarded knife throwing as a weapon and still do that till today. But I'm not a combat knife thrower or anything. I hate violence, I don't carry knives, quite useless here also. And in the history of the Homo sapiens we have two stories that somebody perhaps killed another one with a knife. So for me it's only the idea, and I regard knife throwing as an art. And I say art because it's really hard to learn the way I throw. There's a long way to get there. And for me it's not only the stick the important part. First I want not any stick, I want a straight deep stick. And the way I do the stick is as important as the stick itself for me. So I want to have a technique which makes everything very effortless, so less input, a lot of output. So it looks very cool and easy, and actually it is easy if you are able to do that. And in my opinion, the biggest secret for throwing like that are the grips, and I say secret because you can't see them. You can't see what I do with my hand, how I hold the knife and so on. And I learned these grips all from Russian techniques. It's not my idea, I learned it from other people. And also the mechanics of course are very important to get that. But what you definitely not need for powerful throwing is strength. You don't have to train any muscles. You can solve the problem with a powerful throw, of course. You can do it with raw violence. So do a workout with your body and an easy technique. You got powerful throw. But perhaps you want to do it more on a way like that. Then you need technique, and the technique belongs everything. The way you stand, the grip, the release, the body mechanics, you know that it's obvious. And that's what I want to, in the next clips, want to explain. Different grips and ways how you can use your body. And I want to explain something you need for the grips I will show you now. And this is how you use your index finger. Your Fedin showed it like that. It has the function like a spring. So when you throw, the knife goes against the index, and the index goes against the knife. So you begin with a forward motion, the knife leans back, and the index gets tension. And at the release, you go active against the knife, and you shoot the knife out of the hand. So not only slide, where you more or less use only the arm motion. Now you have the arm motion at the end, this shooting effect, which of course gives additional speed. And in that way you reach a much bigger distance without doing a workout with your body. So you can throw only with slide, let the knife slip out of the hand. And what a lot of people do, and have great success with that, add now the index push. So at the end you shoot the knife. And you will have it, of course, faster. And I discovered that while working with the Fedin grip, and only from that point, when I began to use the index finger correct, then the grip began to work. Before I could not use this grip really good. And I discovered it on very small distances. While retrieving knives, I started doing throws like that. And I thought, wow, that's cool, that has to do with Fedin. And yes, it has. And this is for me also a very good way to learn it, very easy way also. So you go to a very small distance, you do that motion I showed you at the beginning. Swing back, move your arms straight in front of your body to the target. That's all you have to do, is really very easy. And now you can let the knife only go. You will have a stick. But now try not only let it go. Go with the knife with the index, like that. And you will feel it becomes much faster. And that's perhaps good for the first feel. And how said, you can use it, you need it for the grips I show you now, but you can do it like a lot of people do, use it in the slide technique. So, people say index push, index spring, what do you want? It's only that mechanic here. and is a really great tool. A lot of fun, and makes you in an easy step much more advanced. Now let's begin with the Yuri Fedin grip. I show you a few throws first. From unusual angle here, something like that. Can throw behind you. Can throw from very low. And of course any normal angle is possible. So you see, this grip is good for extreme limited motions and throwing from any angle, so a must for combat throws. The grip looks like that. You have it not in the hand, you have it only between middle finger and thumb. The index finger is on spine, so you have that here, this enormous momentum outside. Sorry, had to cut because of too much talking, this tutorial becomes so long. The release with the Fedin grip is different than in the slide. In the slide, when you begin with the forward motion, the knife begins to move in the hand, and in that way you adjust the release angle you need for your distance. With the Fedin grip, the knife is locked in that position. There's absolutely no motion in the hand to the release. So the knife is perfect connected to the hand, which gives a great control and a very direct release, which gives a lot of speed and power. And the release is like that, or better, it's not like that. That would be the wrong. This is like a mini slide. Then the release has to be like that. So when you move forward, the knife works against this index spring here. And the index, with the index, you work in the opposite direction, and at the end you move your index against the knife. And so, of course, the most energy comes from the arm mechanic, but this index spring mechanic gives additional a lot of speed. And now this does not change at a bigger distance. You always do more or less the same, so you don't adjust like in the slide. But this only will work when you have the perfect release angle. And the perfect release angle you will only have at the perfect release point. And when you do your motion here, the angle is always changing, and only here it's correct. Now you have to start. And the knife does that motion. You don't go in that direction. When you use the slide technique and you're about at 5-6 meters, the release is at a quite big angle now. And but in the Fedin you start again, also at the 5 meters with that angle. And with the slide I see often people throw like that. So they have a very quite late release, and they do all the work here in front of them. But that will not work with the Fedin grip. There you're much too late. With the slide you can compensate this this late release and get a good stick. But with the Fedin you have to release about at 12 o'clock. Depends on the distance and the technique. It's also before 12 o'clock. Because here's the best release angle, you will have the best results. And only there it will work. But if you have that release point, you don't have to care a lot about adjustment. The stick will be great, straight, deep, normally. And now I show you the Finnish grip. which is a grip I compared with the Fedin from the effectivity. I learned that grip from a very good Russian thrower, from Dennis and Clemens. So you perhaps have an idea who uses this grip. And what you do here is you take it, like I showed you before, in the middle of the hand, like I showed at the beginning, this basic no-spin grip. Close your fingers, put the index tip on the spine. But what you do now is you hold the knife quite strong. So you press your fingers together, you press the index tip on the spine, don't lay it, only give pressure. And why doing that? Because you want to avoid any motion of the knife. So you want to avoid that the knife begins to slide, and at the end it should not do that thing here, because the closed fingers avoid it. So the release is more or less the knife is ripped out of the hand by the speed of the throwing motion and the index push. So you only give a little less pressure that the hand can be ripped, that the knife can be ripped out of the hand. But, and at the hard part, you should not open your hand, or not you should, you have to do that. Don't open your hand all the time. So when you practice that, first you check your grip, you take the knife strong, that it really can't move, and then you only concentrate on that part, on the throw. So you use an easy, simple mechanic, what you can do automatically, and go to a small distance, that you really focus only on your hand, and especially what happens at the release. It's not easy to get. I work now about half a year with it and still have to concentrate on the closed hand. And then after the throw, you check your hand. Everything closed, nothing opened. Of course it could happen that you make something like that. I used this grip at the beginning sloppy, but I had immediately nice effects. The first effect was the knives were spinning much slower. I could release in a smaller release angle, because that will not happen here. And I had one parallel stick after the other. And that was an effect I had really from the first tries. So you have to feel, it's like the knife is like in a pocket where it's ripped out. But you don't do something like that. And only think about this half spin thumb grip, or military half spin, like people call it, from what Jason Villiard uses so well, with this enormous power. And if you look at that grip, the knife is great in the hand, complete connected. You have the strong thumb here at the side, and everybody who tried that grip knows this is a brutal power grip. And now, only thing, some people have technique like that, and then I think it's obvious it can't be the same. So what we want is a strong connection to the hand. On that way, you have much better control on the knife, and the other effect is, like in the Fedin, you have the best energy transition from your body in the knife. So you will have a lot of power with this grip also. It's absolutely direct. The index tip, direct in the knife. And the best effect you have, first, if you really keep your hand closed, keep everything tight, but also here this early release. If you manage to do the 12 o'clock release, then you have the best angle. Here you go direct in the knife, you have the best speed, the highest speed. And if you release a little later with the Fedin grip, it's really a problem, because there you can't do anything, you will overturn. But here, if you release a little too late, or not too late, if you release later, then at the end you will have a super fast slide, but not in the, like in the normal slide, where the knife begins to slide while the motion. Here it's really at the very last point the knife is with a super short slide leaving the hand. But anyway, that is much better than a loose grip or an open hand. So no matter if you're a beginner or advanced, always keep your hand closed. That will have positive effects. Even if you're not used to it at the first moment, try it a little, you will have definitely a lot of win with that grip. So and now let's compare the grips on a small distance, small arm motion, do as much power as possible. I start with the Fedin grip. It's quite convincing, I think. Now the Finnish. So there's no significant difference. And now the slide. That's not bad, but it's much softer than the other grips. You can't go so hard in the knife because of the slide. There you lose energy. So the Fedin has no slide because it's much too short. It's an extreme momentum here. And the Finnish grip is really hard on the bone. You don't move the knife. All what you give goes direct in the knife. It's very extreme. So these are really the advanced grips, but I like them. And when I throw with power, normally I can do my best and hardest throws with the Fedin technique, especially at bigger distances. I'll show you a few throws then. And what I like also very much is a technique like that, which is also about the Fedin technique. He shows that in his last tutorial. Something like that. So this is only the same motion he does normally at the side, but now you go in another angle, but the principle is the same in my opinion. And so you always go behind you, turn your body a little outside, and then you don't do that too slow. You use that also to get more behind. And then the turning point, you accelerate and then you let your arm loose. It goes in a complete extension and becomes really very fast by itself. So swing back and then let it fall. And you will have enormous acceleration, and it's a good exercise for learning the Fedin technique, and it's also anyway a very good way of throwing. And I only use one of these connected grips, Finnish or Fedin grip, and never have I never have the knife loose in the hand. So the slide technique I show, of course, for the beginning, because you can start it immediately without a lot of practice, but I only take Finnish or Fedin grip. And now at the side it's the same. You go back, you have a body rotation, the hip does first this direction, arm is pulled behind, hip goes in the other direction, you get the tension here, now the arm shoots forward, and there you can let it loose. At the end always comes the index push and makes the throw very fast. So that's the principle of the Fedin technique, short explained. So you go back, hip turns back, Something like that. And then you got this throws. So all my throws which have to do with power are based on pulling, index push, and using very intense fast motions. Nothing like, sometimes I see people, that's wrong. You need to use the momentum and let your arm loose, so that can't be practiced so slow. There's always speed behind, because if you do it slow, then you hold your arm, and that is wrong. Your arm is flying by itself. That's what you do. Because for power, how I said, you need speed. And about the mechanics which make throws very effortless. If I throw something like that here, it looks that I only use my forearm, but actually if you have a look at my hip, I need this little hip shake before, because every throw starts from the legs, and from the legs, from the bottom comes the power. And in the Fedin technique it's called the wave, so the motion walks through your whole body in the index tip. But this is quite hard to learn. You have to be in a perfect rhythm with all these motions, that it works like that. But I think it's also worth to put a lot of time in nice mechanics, because I'm interested in the relation between input and output. So how much energy you have to give in the throw and how much energy arrives really in the target. So some people need to do a workout to reach a lame stick on 5 meters, and others can do it like that. So the difference is, if you don't use mechanics like that, imagine a whip. You have the handle of the whip, you do a short fast motion, and then the wave goes through the whole rope of the whip, and outside you have much more speed than you actually started. And something like that you can of course do with your whole body and with the arm. But there are some big differences to a normal throw. If you throw like that, that's a normal way, then you lift the knife up, and then you start the throw with the knife first. But exactly that you don't do if you use the Fedin or the whip mechanic, because here the knife is moved by other motions, and these motions you do first. For example, you use the Fedin, or a little sideways standing. Now if you turn your body, you see your arm and the knife is pulled behind. Then you start lifting up your elbow, and the knife is pulled after, so it's not an active move of the knife, it's a consequence of this motion here. And you also bring your shoulder back, and then you have a nice drawback. Drawback is always good for speed and power. And at the furthest point, now again you don't move the knife, you begin to rotate your body, and everything is pulled in the other direction now. Then you bring your shoulder forward and your elbow, and the knife should be the last thing which comes. And this makes the throws then really effortless, because the energy you put in increases with all these motions, if you do them correct. I'm not really very good with that, but I practice only on that technique at the moment, and when it works, I show you a few clips from a practice session I just did. And there I had really a few very nice throws, and it was the most satisfying no-spin throwing I ever had. And you have to imagine your arm is the rope, so a relaxed arm, but that does only work, the arm is relaxed, but the hand must hold the knife strong, otherwise it will not work. Okay. these motions here. With the body rotation, there's all a chain reaction of motions which at the end lead to a very nice throw, if it is all correct. For example, watch that throw. So this was 6 meter 50, and this is with the Fedin Skanf technique and with a half spin. With a no spin I perhaps could do it, but far not that fast like with a half spin. Anyway, this was for 6 meter 50. The motion is really very limited, and you see the throw is in a low arc, so it has quite high speed. And this only works with that. First I have an index push, extreme index push on that way. I have the knife quite far outside, so it has itself a lot of momentum which helps me to get the distance. And what you can't really see, these motions with the body, because I keep them very limited. And on that way you have this chain reaction which increases the energy you put in and makes a throw like that possible. So only to have an idea, you have an input, you have an output, and how is the relation, how is the effectivity of a throw. For me this is a very important part. And if you're interested in the Skanf technique, which is that thing here, then, so very limited motions, Fedin. Then go to the Fedin channel, watch the last video, it is translated now in English, where he explained the technique. Or also my tutorials, the best for that is which I made in the cellar, explain it very detailed. And this technique is for no spin, not for big distance, but with half spin you can reach 7 meters without problem, and that's really extremely nice. So you can do small motions, you will have hard throws, very hard throws on that way, and you can use any angles. You can throw from low, you can throw behind you, you can go straight forward. If you train your other hand, you can throw around you. And that's a technique, meanwhile, more people learned very well. So perhaps you need half a year, structured practice, few hours a day, but really practicing, not playing around. Then you will get the technique. It is not so complicated. So, if you're interested, how's that? Watch the videos. And a few words about knives. That really depends on the style you want to throw. But I only talk about the style I throw, so if you want to do limited motions, very fast motions, then you can't use heavy and long knives. So I recommend about 25 centimeters, a weight 200 to 250 grams. Then they should be very solid, I mean thick. I use only 6 millimeters, because if you give a lot of power in the knife, if you have a thin knife, it will lose easier control. So 5 millimeter perhaps also okay. I don't like 5 millimeters, I only use 6 millimeters. And very important, the balancing of the knife. For no spin, it's obvious from the physics that a handle heavy knife is better. But it should not be too handle heavy. This is perhaps good for a beginner. He will have in a very easy way his no spin sticks, but if you're a little advanced, you will see too handle heavy has disadvantages. So I would say something like that is really great. It's a little outside of the middle in direction to the handle, and I show you that knife because it's really a terrible knife. It's one of my, perhaps it's the second knife I cut out by myself a few years ago. But that shows also that I'm not interested in knives. I don't own professional knives. I only have self-made crap knives if you want. I use stainless steel because of the noise they make. It's about your neighbors. A hardened carbon steel knife, you have a fail, it sinks through the air, and my knives only make something like that. So that's the reason. And another reason is I'm not interested in knives. I'm only interested to have a piece of steel I can control very well. So that's why, and this one is a knife I can control very well. And another thing is, the knife should not have any things in the way here, like, how do we call it, a wobble or anything, because I use half spin and no spin, and sometimes I have it very far outside, sometimes I go deep in the knife, so I want to decide where I place my index finger, no matter how I hold the knife. So all my knives are only straight, you can place it anywhere. So not the knife should tell you where you have to put your finger, because you change techniques and you have different hand sizes. So only a straight knife is okay. Okay, that's it. 25 centimeters, 6 millimeters thick, weight 200, 250, and little handle heavy. Then you should have a nice knife for the techniques I use. And it's very easy to make knives by yourself. I designed all this stuff here with a free 2D CAD program on the PC, which is very easy to do, only with 2 functions. And I have a local laser cutter, so one knife cost me about 10 euros, about $10 also. And I grind them with an angle grinder, and I can test always new designs and lose often knives, so it's really no problem then. So perhaps you have fun making your own knives. Finally got one. So I stopped now with the tutorial. The last part I was asked to explain or to teach how to throw big distances like 10 meters here. But here I have to quit because that's something I can't really do. I have to try it and have a good few ones, and that's what you see on video. But I never practice 10 meters. I only throw on my throwing range and work on smaller distances, so I have no trick or no secret for the big distance. For the effortless look of my throws, the grip or the secrets, because you can't see them, and also the body mechanics are important, but for 10 meters my trick is I use exactly that what I worked on smaller distances, without modification, only on a more intense way, but not different. And I think also 10 meter throwing is very hard to get consistent with no spin. The best 10 meters I know are from Octavio Garcia, but he's using half spin with great form, great sticks, and looks consistent. I've seen nothing comparable till now with no spin, so for me it's only doing a cool video or testing a technique if it could work. That's when I throw 10 meters, but I never practice 10 meters. Okay, that's that part. And now I'm at the end, and I'd appreciate a lot of feedback from the people, what they're missing, what I perhaps explained not good enough, and I think there will be also a few points which we can discuss about. I think I didn't tell wrong things, but perhaps other people see it different. Okay, so tell me your opinion. Goodbye.